Well, welcome back to Brilliant Fishing. Today I'm here with Clayton Eudy, and today on the podcast, I'm excited to have him here with us today. He's a local angler. I almost said younger local angler. He is younger than me, but anyway. But he's a local angler. He's been making some serious waves, both on the water and on the stage. Clayton Eudy. So some of you know him as Clayton Christopher, if you're into the local music scene.
That's correct.
And he is not only a talented musician, but also a rising name in the local crappie tournament world. And he's an organizer of something we're going to talk about tonight, the High Rock Crappie Club. And so that's a community that is built around sharing knowledge, learning tournament fishing, and he's going to talk about that, building friendships, helping more people fall in love with crappie fishing. Yep. And so whether he's chasing slabs or playing tunes on the weekend.
That's right.
Clayton brings passion and creativity to everything he does. So it's a pleasure to welcome you to the show.
Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. So this is great. Been looking forward to doing this for a while.
Yep.
Well, just to kind of kick things off tonight, tell me a little bit about how you got started in crappie fishing and what is it about crappie fishing that does it for you?
So when I was 9 years old, we got our first family fishing boat. It was a ProCraft with an 80 horsepower Mercury 16-foot ProCraft.
Okay.
And me, my dad, and my brother, we took off, went to Flat Swamp, dumped his hooker in, and Dad went to park the truck. Me and my brother were in the boat, and we're just using the trolling motor to get back to the dock. Except we were going away from the dock. We had it pointed at the dock. We were going away from the dock, and we never made it to the dock. We bought the boat, didn't check it out, just took it to the lake, and the trolling motor was wired backwards. And so it was running in reverse, not forward. And so, like I said, I was 9. My brother would have been 13-ish around then. Might have just turned 14. And so we had no idea. We'd never been on a boat, never been on a fishing boat with a trolling motor. And so luckily we had some friends that were also going. They brought Dad over there. We got all of it figured out.
Right.
We went fishing, and we were just throwing lines out and just driving around and catching fish. And that's how it started.
Very good.
Yeah.
And so, but you sort of settled in on crappie fishing. Is there anything specific about crappie that you really sort of like that game, or like why not bass fishing? Or well, you do some bass fishing though, right?
I fish a lot of bass tournaments, not as many as crappie tournaments, but I grew up, like I said, fishing at the lake some. We had some ponds that we stocked with bass, and so it was nothing for me to go catch 24-pounders in a day between a couple ponds that we had on family property there. And I loved bass fishing and still do.
Right.
The thing that's made it more crappie fishing has been probably the LiveScope part of it. Not that you can't LiveScope bass, because you can, and I've made money doing that. But my bass fishing now is more for just chunking and winding. Go relax, hang out, get a bite every now and again, set the hook, that kind of thing. And the crappie fishing's just been something that's been a little more competition oriented, and not really sure why. It's just kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. Sure. Well, and speaking of the competition aspect, and I think that's something that we want to spend some time talking about, this High Rock Crappie Club.
Yep.
So, High Rock Crappie Club. Well, let's just talk about that. So, just tell me a little bit about what inspired you to start it. How did it kind of get off the ground, and what's kind of the mission or the goal of your club?
So the whole point, we started last summer. The whole point was to grow the sport. When it comes to crappie fishing, tournament-wise, crappie have always been seen as not a sport fish or not a game fish. They're more of a let's go kick back, throw some minnows in the water, relax, hang out with pawpaw, that kind of thing for crappie fishing, more so than the go-get-it style of bass fishing. It's crappie fishing's for the table,
right?
Bass fishing's for the money.
Okay.
And that's kind of the way it's always been. Now that we've always had crappie tournaments, and there's always been a lot of money in crappie fishing, but when you compare it to bass, not so much.
Right.
And when I talk to people like, hey, why don't you come fish some crappie tournaments? They go crappie fishing, they catch a lot of crappie. Well, I don't want to get involved, or it costs too much to, it's $100 for a tournament, and and it's there's a lot that goes on in the crappie tournament world that turns people away. Just like if your only options for bass fishing and bass tournaments were MLF or Bassmaster, you know, whether it's the Opens or the Toyota Series or whatever, it costs a lot of money to do it. But
it's not accessible for a lot of people.
Right, but there's a lot of $25 bass tournaments on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, Mondays, whatever. You know, on every lake in our state and most all the country. There's multiple tournaments per week, and I'm kind of more targeting those people. You know, the people who maybe don't have as much knowledge or maybe don't have the time or the money that it takes to fish these big tournaments, because you're looking at, you know, you need to pre-fish for these tournaments, because if you're not, everybody else is. You got to have the money. You're looking at $200 for a tournament after you pay the $100 entry fee and the membership and the big fish and you know, gas and bait and all that. You're looking at $200 a tournament, and if you want to run for points, that's an extra amount. If you want to, there's a lot of money tied up in it, and there's a lot of people who say, hey, you know, I would love to, but I don't have the money. So one thing I've done with the High Rock Crappie Club is, hey, this is accessible for everybody. It's $25. You know, 5 of that goes to big fish, 20 goes to the tournament. We do have a side pot where you can pay a optional $15, winner take all. That adds a little to it. So for the people who want to pay $40, you know, it's like, well, we can get a little bit more back if we do that. For the people who only want to pay $25 just to come and hang out, that's fine too. You know.
Well, I think that's just a natural fit, because ATMs spit it out in 20s.
That's right.
So,
well, the reason the side pot is the reason the side pot is $15 is because it makes it easy for people to just hand two $20 bills.
I think that's great. It's very accessible cost wise.
Yep.
And so that's I think that's great. So to grow the sport, so you're getting people maybe otherwise wouldn't, you know, sign up for the $100 tournament and, you know, make the big investment to do the series. It's just more of a laid back type of user, like it's entry level.
You know, if you've been to several of them, to the weigh-ins and stuff, we stand around and talk. Hey, this is what I did. This is where I saw this. This is what, you know, what I caught mine on. It's more of, you go to these, not that it doesn't happen, but you go to some of these bigger tournaments and people who do well, they don't like to share much information. You know, and I get it. They're making money. They don't want to give it away. You know, they don't want to give up their spots. They don't want to say, well, I'm catching them on this because there's another tournament next week and they want to win that one too. You know, there's a lot of people that will give up that information, but most people won't. And it doesn't matter if it's tournament or not. Most people aren't going to tell you where their honey hole is. And this club, the reason I call it a club, is about giving you the honey hole. Because in growing the sport, you need to catch more fish. The random guy who shows up, he needs to catch more fish. I need to catch more fish. We all need to catch more fish. And if he's not catching more fish or you're not catching more fish, you're going to quit going eventually.
Right. And like when you say give them the honey hole, I mean, that's more than just giving them a spot. I mean, you're talking about, I mean, part of it is spots, but part of it is types of spots. Part of it is what kind of baits, what kind of presentations, how to use your electronics. And I mean, there's just so many things. I mean, I know I was there this past tournament, and it was really cool to listen to, you know, people talk, well, this is what was working for me. I thought that was great. It's a great learning experience, especially for somebody like, you know, myself. I'm not really a tournament angler, but like it's fun, and like I can have fun when it's $20, you know.
Right. It is,
and
harder,
I can learn, you know.
It's harder to have fun the more money you pay, because in the back of your mind, hey, I paid this money, and I need to get it back. And in reality, within the crappie world locally here, you're looking at 5 or 8 guys who are going to win the money every time. You know? And so you go to these big tournaments, you pay, not that you can't learn, not that you can't do well, not that you can't get paid. But if you look at the results, majority of the time, there's certain guys winning. And that kind of turns people away sometimes.
I think it just depends. You know, everybody's a little different, and like for some people, you know, that doesn't represent a sizable investment. I think somebody like myself, you know, it's a little bit of a chunk of change. So yeah, that's probably true for a lot of people. So tell us a little bit about the tournament itself, tournament series. Like, of course, if you didn't catch it from the name, it's the High Rock Crappie Club, so that's the lake. But as far as tell us a little bit about the way the tournaments go and like the locations and then all that.
So last year we just fished High Rock on Wednesdays. You could go wherever, do whatever. You just had to fish between 5:30 and 8:30. Come back and weigh in by 9 o'clock. What we had was a lot of people who went and fished the same spot every week, and they had the same weight every week, whether that was a big weight or a little weight. They had the same weight. They went to the same spot, and for some people they made money. For some people they didn't. We had some people that moved around, and tried different things. But this year, I switched it up to where we're fishing a different section of the lake every week. So I took a map, made it into 6 different sections. It started with Second Creek, then Crane Creek, Swearing Creek, then what I'm calling the East Side Creeks, which is the eastern side of the river.
The Davidson side.
Yep, which is Crow, Duck, Abbott's, the coves in between Abbott's and Flat Swamp, and the mouth of Flat Swamp. Now this doesn't include Flat Swamp on the other side of the bridge, and it doesn't include Abbott's on the other side of the bridge. For accessibility, depending on water level, you may or may not can get under there, so I didn't want to handicap anybody by them not being able to get into either of those places. So took those sections out, made the water a little smaller. Then what we have is the West Side Creeks, which is the south end of the lake. So Panther, Black's Bottom, Doctor's Neck, things like that. On the west side, below Second Creek, that's a section, and then the main channel itself is a section.
Right.
So in my mind, shrink the water down. People who may not have as much knowledge or as much experience on High Rock. If you just say, hey, you got to fish in this pond, so to speak. We're fishing in this pond, then they feel, hey, the water's smaller. I don't have to have 100 spots. I can just go fish this one little area and compete as well as anybody. And I think with results, that's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
We've had several tournaments so far, and as far as general tournament guys go, general tournament guys are not winning. There's been some there. They're not winning every week like they would if the whole lake was open. And some of those guys even have said, hey, I've never really spent much time in this creek.
Right.
So I learned a few spots,
Okay.
And so to me, now when these big tournaments do come back around, they've got an extra 2 spots in their bank of, hey, I caught a good fish in that one summer tournament on this laydown over here. That's just an extra spot for them because, we as people, doesn't matter what you're doing, if you do the same thing day in and day out, you don't really, you get as good as you can get at that, and that's it. And so I think 2 things. 1, it makes it easier for everybody to compete. 2, it gives everybody new spots to learn because they have to. If they're going to fish the tournament, you have to go and learn this area if you want to do well. And most people, if they're going to fish, they're going to go and learn because they do want to do well. And so it's helping people learn the lake, learn how to break down a lake, how to look for things, whether it's, a lot of people, they've been fishing the same brush piles for the last 20 years. And they got 5 of them on the lake they've been going to, never even looked for another one.
Right.
They just go fish those same 5 every other Saturday, and that's all they do,
Yeah.
And now maybe they're using their side scan and they're looking for new brush piles or new stumps, or I didn't find any brush piles, so I just went over here to this dock and I caught some fish off of this dock. Well, now they're learning how to fish docks, you know. And so that's the breaking it down into sections. That's the thought process on that, is just shrinking the game a little bit, making it easier for everybody, so it's not so overwhelming. High Rock's not a huge lake, but it's pretty big. Right. When it comes to people who maybe don't travel the lake a lot, it's a big place, and there's a lot of brush, and there's a lot of docks, and there's a lot of rocks, and there's a lot of everything, so learning it all is hard for a lot of people. And we're just breaking it down each week. We're going to run through it twice, so we fish a different section each week. At the end of the 6 weeks, we'll fish a Saturday where you can go to any of those sections. So anything you've learned in those first 6 weeks, then you can use that on that Saturday, go to any of those 6 sections. And then we'll start back over and run the same loop again, and then have another final Saturday tournament where it's back open again. You can fish any of those areas. That way, hopefully, everybody kind of has enough information for each different part of the lake, and they can make their own decisions on where they want to go, in that tournament.
Okay.
A lot of people have said, oh, I don't like that, or I think I should be able to fish wherever I want, and you can, just not in this tournament.
Right. Yeah.
Not this 3 hours of Thursday evenings.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to fish the tournament, you just have to fish this area.
Sure.
And one thing we learned last year is there's some people that really want to learn, they just don't know how, or they don't have somebody to help them. And I think I'm seeing it with a couple of different people so far this year, and we're going to make some really good fishermen, out of having these tournaments, because they are trying, they are learning. They're sending messages. Hey, I was at such and such spot today. I didn't find anything. What should I be looking for? They're sending that to me. They're sending that to other people as well. It's not like they're coming to me because I'm by no means the end all be all when it comes to information on this lake. I do spend a lot of time there, and the reason I chose High Rock for this is you can fish High Rock any time of year, wherever you want. If you like fishing docks, you can fish docks and succeed fishing docks on High Rock year round. If you like fishing deep, they're there too year round. If you like fishing shallow like I do, they're there year round. And we'll get into that more later.
Okay.
But that's kind of the way we set it up. And so Thursday tournament day, I'm at the boat ramp at 4:45, checking in, taking up money, whatever. You put your boat in, take off. Once you paid, I don't check live wells or any of that. We're just a club here competing for $25. If you want to cheat for $25, you got to answer for that, not me.
That's between you and the Lord.
That's right. Now, that doesn't mean that if I catch somebody cheating, I'm not going to ask them to not come back, because we're not here to cheat.
Sure. Yeah.
So if we do find somebody cheating or fishing where they're not supposed to or whatever, then we'll handle that. But 4:45, I'm there. You can start paying then. I'm at the ramp until 5:30. Later, if you're going to be late, give me a call, shoot me a text. Hey, I'm going to be there at 5:35. I get it. Sometimes traffic. Sometimes it's just hard to get out of work and get there.
Right.
So I don't mind waiting. I'm not going to wait till 6, but I'll wait, a little while. And if you can't make it by 5:35, 5:40, something like that, like, hey, I'm going to be there. I promise I'm coming. I promise I'm fishing. Okay, come fish. You can either come find me on the lake, hand me your $25 or $40, or you can wait till the weigh-in, pay then. It's fine. Now, we're not going to make a habit of it. We're not going to take up money at the weigh-in. But if you say, hey, man, I'm running late, can I pay you at the weigh-in? Yeah. It's fine. As long as you come to the weigh-in and you pay. If you don't come to the weigh-in, I'll just ask you not to come back, because we don't want people to show up late and say, yeah, I'm fishing, and then not do well, and then not pay their money.
No, right.
But we do want to make it accessible for people who can't get there.
Exactly.
If they only want to fish from 6 to 8:30, that's okay.
Yeah.
And so as long as they're paying, it's fine. But anyways, go fishing. Start fishing at 5:30, so you can ride around the lake or ride around the area that we're fishing. Find your starting spot, whatever, between 4:45 and 5:30. Start fishing at 5:30. Stop at 8:30, and head on back to the landing and be in line to weigh in by 9.
Okay.
That's enough time to get pretty much everywhere on the lake. Load your boat up. Most everybody can get their boat loaded up and everything. We're looking at, I think we had 11 the first tournament this year. We had 11, and sometimes we have 5 or 6, but everybody can get loaded up, come over there. We go through the weigh-in, process of like, how does a weigh-in go? Because a lot of these guys have never fished a tournament before.
Okay.
We're starting at 5:30 and stop fishing at 8:30. Head on back to the boat landing. That gives everybody plenty of time. Be in the weigh-in line by 9, which is generally not a line. We have 5 to 10 boats, and everybody's kind of standing around, go through the process of, you come up there, you say your name, Clayton and whoever your partner is, and you dump your fish in. We weigh your 5 fish, and then pick the biggest one. You pick your biggest one, whatever you want to choose. If it's your biggest one, great. If not, that's on you.
So my 0.8, 0.75 fish, that's my big one.
If that's your big one, that's your big one. But pick your big one. We'll weigh one big fish for big fish, and we do encourage everybody to weigh a big fish to break ties. So, like, just say second place or first place, has a tie. Whoever has the biggest big fish will be the tiebreaker.
Okay.
I don't think we've had a tie on first or second yet. We have had ties on big fish, which then we don't really have a way to break that tie, so we just split it.
Okay.
We've had that happen several times. And, I didn't spring a lot of money for super nice scales, so our scales weigh in pounds and ounces. So a lot of times we may have a tie on big fish or any weight, there's ties, and somebody says bigger because we're looking at 1/16 of an ounce versus hundredths on some of the nicer scales. But for $25 tournament, if somebody wants to buy us a new set of scales that read in hundredths because they got burned, that's fine.
Sure.
But I'm not going to spend the $400 on the scales.
It's understandable.
But, so weigh in, pay out a little bit of money, sit around and talk. For some guys, they like to sit around and talk and learn, and some like to sit around and talk and help people learn, and then some just hit the road. We'll see you next week, and some never come back. And we're okay with all that. Because again, it's about growing the sport, getting more people to show up to tournaments, and if we can do that on Thursdays, then we can translate that into a couple more come fall tournament season, a couple more people at those tournaments, and that's the main goal. Is just have people enjoy tournament fishing. When I came up tournament fishing as a kid, I think I remember a lot of the really good stuff and a lot of the fun because I was a kid and I wasn't really a part of the controversies and the issues that have always been in all facets of tournament fishing, all species, not just crappie. And as I got older, I found myself in the middle of a lot of those controversies. And at one point, I quit fishing altogether because people were calling me, asking me what lake I fished on after a tournament that I won because they didn't see me on the lake that we were on. And I guess I don't take too well to people questioning my integrity, and people claim that I'm cheating because they didn't see me fishing, or I post a picture on Facebook, back in 2015, and the next time I go to the lake, there's 8 people sitting in that spot, and it's like, man, this is not what I thought it was. When I was a kid, I thought we were all going and eating breakfast and hanging out and going and fishing and coming back. And then as I got older, it's pretty cutthroat business, and it was a business for a lot of people.
Well, it can be, I think, yeah.
And so I quit, and then LiveScope comes along. I'd been a lot of different places in life since then, and came back home, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try out this LiveScope thing, and got one, put it on my boat, and a month later I was fishing a tournament and made some money, and I was like, well, this is kind of fun. So then the next fall rolls around and start fishing a couple tournaments there and making a little money, and I'm like, hey, this is kind of fun, and so it's just progressed from there. But like it did kind of the first go around, more controversy, and a lot of people are turned away from tournament fishing in general because of the controversies. You see it on TV. You see the MLF guys were cheating, or so-and-so got disqualified from the Bassmaster because they were quote-unquote cheating, and then you see it locally as well. You see the arguments, and I've been a part of them, as much as anybody. I think, my stance on it is a lot of people are friends with everybody, and I don't think you can do that. I think there has to be a line where you say, hey, this is where I believe right and wrong. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong, but this is where I believe right and wrong is. And you got to stand on one side or the other. And for me, starting this club was to get rid of that controversy, right? Because a lot of people, they pay a lot of money to get in these tournaments, and they expect it to go one way because, to a lot of people, $100 is a lot. This is a very serious thing. To other people, $100 is not that much, and it's just a hangout. And that's where the controversy comes from, because you have some people who are just out here having a good time, and maybe they do something or say something to somebody that the person who was out there taking it very serious, they're like, hey, I spent a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of effort on this, and you screwed it up for me because you're just having a good time. You know, and so to me, take away the money aspect of it, that takes a lot of weight off a lot of people's shoulders, and you can have a lot more fun. And you can avoid a lot of those controversies.
I could see some wisdom in that. Yeah, I think like for me, you know, and I fished one, I thought it was fun because, you know, it's not enough money that you're going to get
Right.
your panties all in a wad if you don't
Right.
come home with some. Like,
Right.
okay, $20 or, you know, whatever. If it was 100, I'd have a harder time, you know. And I've fished some of those before. Actually, not crappie tournament. I don't think I've ever fished a $100 crappie tournament. I have done the striper and so
Right.
forth, and
Yep.
got my rear end handed to me.
Yep.
And so,
We've all been there. We'll all be there again.
Somebody handed my rear end to me, and I handed them $100.
Yep. I couldn't tell you how many, you know,
But,
$300, $400, $500 tournaments of all different kinds that I've entered in.
Yeah.
And like, man, that was dumb. Why did you do that? You know, like, and I knew it
Well,
right after
and
I
I
paid
do-
it. I was like, that was a bad decision. You know, and but you know, you sign
Yeah.
up 2 weeks ahead of time, and it's like, why'd you spend that money? That, you know,
Yeah.
there is a little bit in competition that, you know, I enjoy the competition because,
Sure.
you know,
Yep.
a lot of times it's just one bite is all you need. And, you know, you get to a point where it is one bite every time. You know, you sit down after a tournament and what could I have done better to go from 7th or 5th or whatever to 1st? And a lot of times it's just one fish.
Sure.
And so a lot of times you pay that money because I'm going to get that one fish this time.
Yeah.
And then you end up over time, it's like, I never did get that fish. And then you look back, you spent thousands of dollars, and every tournament you're mad because you didn't get that one fish. You didn't have a whole lot of fun. Where you back it up, take the money out of it, take the stress of having to fish all day and having 5, 6, 8, 10 different spots to go to, pre-fish, and take all that out of it. Let's just go fishing.
Sure.
But let's have a little competition too, you know.
Just enough.
Right. Just
enough.
Just enough to be like, a little bit of bragging here and there, you know, and I hear it, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, I got you this time. Hey, yeah, you know, and I love that. Like that's what it's for.
Yeah.
For us to laugh about it,
Right,
and,
right.
you know.
But not enough for people to get butthurt about
But we don't
it.
want anybody to get to
right.
get upset, you know,
I
because
understand. Yeah.
like I said, a lot of people don't understand how tournaments go or tournament etiquette, so to speak, and
Okay.
so part of this is learning that as well. You
Yeah.
know, like.
Right.
Whose spot is whose, and you know how that kind of stuff works, and that's probably the majority of the issues that you see in the big tournaments is, you know, oh, that's my brush pile. I've heard it millions of times, you know, when I was a kid back when we were tight lining or long lining or whatever.
Sure.
You know, that's my brush pile, and well, I don't see
I don't
your
see
name
your
on
name
it.
on it.
and then you know they drive circles around you, or they try to fish it too, and you know. With LiveScope, there's not as much of that, but there is still a little.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah.
And so, you know, stuff like that, we're trying to, hey, you know, this is a 3-hour deal. There's not a whole lot riding on it. There's other
Sure.
spots, you know, especially with not having as many people as we have, you know, 5 or 6 boats. We can find everybody 2 spots in each one of these places that they can fish, you know what I'm saying? Without anybody arguing or having any issues.
Yep.
And I want to make crappie tournament fishing enjoyable for the majority of people.
I think that's a noble goal. Something I did want to ask you about, because this is a summer tournament series, and we're talking about High Rock Lake.
Yep.
And I think if you fish High Rock Lake, which is in some ways similar to our other lakes around here, you know, we have summertime pattern of these fish go out and they get on brush. But because we have a lot, of course, in our area, if you fish here a lot, you know, we got a lot of black crappies.
Yep.
And a lot of times in the summer, the bite is notoriously a little difficult.
Yep.
Okay, so with the summer series, I feel like different anglers are trying to pull different tricks out of their bag to like, how am I going to get these lethargic black crappie to commit and take a bait?
Yep.
So why don't you give us our thought, or I said that wrong. Why don't you give us your thoughts on what does it take to catch these fish this time of year?
A lot of luck. I think.
Okay.
I fished Sunday, and I fished probably 20 different brush piles between 3 and 8. Majority of those brush piles had plenty of fish on them that didn't want to bite.
Okay.
And that's just summertime fishing, right?
Oh man,
And
can get it aggravating, I'm sure.
every once in a while, I'd come across a pile and I could sit there and catch a few on it.
Uh-huh.
You know, a lot of the issue with brush pile fishing in the summertime is not so much that the fish don't want to bite; it's that too many of the fish want to bite.
Too many of the small ones.
Yeah. And so, you know, our water is very clear right now. We could use a couple inches of rain to dirty it up a little bit and make fishing a little better, but our water's very clear, so those fish on the brush pile, say you're fishing in 10 foot of water, when that bait hits the water, they can see it. And as it's falling, those little ones that are sitting up on top, they see it and they take off to it because they know if it gets down there to the big ones, they're not going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
So they meet it halfway down, right? And then they're just pecking at it and pecking at it and pecking at it. Well, now your big ones are sitting there like, that something's not right about that, you know, because if it's a minnow swimming by and all these little ones are pecking at it, it's going to swim off or they're going to eat it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of, I don't think so much of it is that the fish don't want to bite. It's just that it doesn't look right to them.
Well, they get a lot of time to study it if that
Right.
water's clear.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, they get to see it coming. They get to see other fish hitting it. They get to see it not acting like an actual fish, you know. And if all these little ones are hitting it but not eating it, why would they want to eat it, you know? And so I think a lot of summer struggle is finding the right brush pile, meaning one that doesn't have all the little fish on it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I will say Sunday, the fish that I caught the most of were the 0.8s to 1.2s. And when I got there, that's all that was on the brush pile. If I pulled up on one that had, you know, a bunch of brim or a bunch of small crappie on it, I might would catch a small crappie off of it.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, I didn't catch any of the big ones that were there because you could see them. You know, you can look at the LiveScope, look down in the brush, you can see them there, and they didn't want to bite if the little ones were there. And I think that's majority because the little ones are, you know, pecking the bait. They're kind of giving the, hey, this isn't right, you know,
vibe.
And then the big ones just kind of sitting down there in the back, just like, all right, well, that doesn't look exactly right. And you could hit them with it, and they're still not going to bite it. Where if you find the right brush pile that has some bigger fish on it, you can catch those bigger fish a little easier. But for me personally, when it comes to summertime fishing, I like to go shallow. Like I said earlier, I like to fish shallow. 3 foot, 4
Really?
foot, 5 foot, whether it's a stump or a rock or a lay down or a dock even. I'm not big on dock fishing, mainly because I'm not good at it. That's
Okay. Right.
I don't practice and I'm not good at it. Shooting docks is not something that I've ever really done. If you can shoot docks, you can catch some really, really nice fish right now. I'm just not great at it. And,
Yeah, me either. It's not my
know,
thing, but
you can always catch fish on docks. Summer, winter, fall, spring, whenever. That's just never something I've been into. That is something I've been practicing a lot lately. And dock fishing over the years, whether it's bass or crappie, has gotten harder because we build our docks different than we used to. Used to dock fishing, you pull it to a dock, and the dock's way out in the water, lots of poles, and it's 2 feet off the water. And shooting one of those is pretty easy. Now you got a small little platform with a ramp down to a floater, and your floater sits 4 to 5 inches off the water, and you've got a 1.5 by 5 inch gap that you can shoot your bait under. The fish are still there.
yeah,
You know, they're still on docks like they always have been, but they're just a little harder to get to.
it'd be hard to get in there. Yeah.
And so it's, if you're good at it, that's the way to do it right now.
Okay. So if you're brush pile fishing, and just to kind of summarize what I think I'm hearing you say, so if you want to do the brush piles in the deeper water, you just need to but just keep moving until you find a quality fish.
Yep.
And then but then you're saying that, you know, for tournament fishing, you prefer going shallow. And that's pretty much a all year thing, or is it just a summer?
That's for me all year. Yeah.
All year. Okay.
We do have a lot of those black crappie. We have a lot of white crappie in High Rock. And in turn, that gives us a lot of hybrids. And so I personally enjoy the hybrid fish. They're very skinny, and they always look like they weigh 4 pounds when you bring them up, and they weigh 2 every time because they're so long, their mouths are so big, and they're just not very thick. But you're going to find them shallow most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the white crappie, you'll find them tight on wood most of the time, and they will be shallower.
Okay.
So for me, I target those fish because you generally don't find as many little ones grouped up.
Mm-hmm.
They're also, you get more of a reaction bite off of those because they're in shallower water. They don't have as much time to look at the bait, and if you just put it on them, they'll bite it. So I think those fish are easier to catch. It's harder to catch those fish, but they are easier to catch, and that doesn't come out very good. But shallow water LiveScope fishing is very hard.
Okay.
Shallow water fish are easier to catch.
Okay. That makes total sense.
So,
yeah.
Like I said, that you get more reaction bite. It's hard to get a reaction bite on a deep water fish. You have to put a lot of weight on and just drop it right on them and almost spook them.
Sure.
You got to hit them without hitting them
Yeah.
to get the reaction bite because they can see so much better in the clear water.
Right.
Where the shallow water is generally a little dirtier,
Mm-hmm.
just from the general waves and things. And a lot of times once you get out off the bank, you're looking at more of a rock bottom, and so there's not as much mud and stuff moving around down there. And they have time to look at them, so that's why I like fishing shallow.
Okay. I can see some advantages to that.
Shallow fishing is definitely easier to catch the fish, harder to put the bait on the fish.
Okay, right. Yeah, I can see
So,
that.
That's why I like shallow fishing because I do think the better fish for our fishery, be it High Rock now, Tuggertown, Baden, Tillery, Norman, the other lakes in our area are not quite the same.
Yeah.
I think you can do it on all those lakes, but not as much as you can on High Rock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, question that I had then. So about the shallow fishing, you're saying the fish they're easier to catch when you can get the bait in their face, but it's maybe a little harder to get the bait in their face, and part of that has to do with they're shallow, but like setting up your electronics.
Right.
Seems like that's a big part. So can you kind of walk us through like how your electronics setup changes when you're doing the shallow?
If I know that I'm going to fish a particular laydown or a particular stump or rock in shallow water, and I'm just driving my boat to that spot to fish that spot, come off plane, I go up there in my LiveScope, I'm looking at, just say we're in 10 feet of water, right? And looking at the bank, I'm getting 30 feet from this item, whatever it may be. So I'm going to set my LiveScope to 30 feet, and if it's 10 foot of water, I'm going to set it on 15 for the depth. So I can get up, ease up to whatever it is, to say it's a laydown. I'm looking at fishing that laydown, the end of that laydown being 15 to 20 feet from the front of the boat. So that 30 foot, I may even back it up to 25 on the length across the screen, so that I can see everything that fish is doing. A lot of people say, oh, you just need to know that there's one in there, or some people say I have my stuff dialed in that I can see him blink, and that's what I want out of mine, because the biggest part of catching a fish out of something like that is seeing the way that they react to the bait. So I'm going to zoom mine in as close as I can on this item, if it's a stump or laydown or whatever, and on the particular fish that I want to catch. I look up and I see, hey, there's a good one in the bottom of this laydown, right? And he's at 16 feet. I want to have that fish as big as I can on my screen so that I can see exactly what he thinks when that bait hits the water. Because I feel confident that first movement, whether it's a tail movement or a side movement or a mouth movement or the fish blinking, I can't actually see the fish blink, but that first movement that fish makes, I can tell you if that fish is going to bite right then. And that comes from looking at a lot of them, and if that fish makes a movement that says, hey, I'm not going to bite it, I want that bait out of there. I don't want to try to talk him into it. I don't want to bother him. Can you bother him into biting? I don't think so, personally.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people say that you can, or that you can annoy them until they bite. I think probably what you're actually doing is the fish just isn't seeing the bait, and then finally they see it and they bite it. you know, because I've tried to annoy a lot of fish into biting, and it doesn't work. It hasn't for me. So I need to see what that fish is doing. So I'm zoomed in as tight as I can on that fish to allow me to see exactly what's going on. I use a 126, a Garmin 126 LiveScope with a 34 transducer. I feel like that gives me the best picture, the best everything that I need out of the stuff that I've used. Now, they have 20-inch screens, they have 22-inch screens, 16s, whatever. All those things would probably be better. Me personally can't afford them, so I don't have one. Otherwise, I would.
I'm not. I've heard a guy. Speaking of that, I saw a video the other day. No, I was reading an article, and there's some tech nerd person that has figured out how to sync your screen to those smart glasses, like those the Ray-Bans with the. I don't know what they're called. Is it smart glasses?
They have some smart glasses, and then
but it's called something. I can't think what it is now. But anyway,
Oculus is the big virtual reality.
The big one, yeah. Well, these were just like the Ray-Bans, but they had figured out how to sync the screen so that like you didn't have to look at it. Like you could just be looking out here, and you could see your bait hit the water like in real life, but you could also see it. Like,
as soon as it comes available to the public market, I'll have it for sure.
It's crazy.
Yep, and it doesn't take that to win. You don't need that to win.
No, it doesn't. Yeah,
but it does make winning easier.
Well, it just make it. Everything makes it a little more effortless.
Yep.
If you
I started out with a 106, and I still have that screen. I use it for mapping. I started out, won a lot of money on the 106, and that's fine. And then I got in a buddy's boat. He had a 126. We were bass fishing, and I said, "Man, if I ever get one of these." if I ever get a 126, they better watch out. And I recently bought a new boat. Well, I got all 126s, right? So I've got them at the console, the front, and is the picture any better? No. Is it bigger? Yes. Can I see that fish blink a little better? Yes.
Probably it's a little bigger.
Right. It just makes it a little bigger. It's probably not any clearer than the 106. I'm not a big tech guy, so as far as like the pixels and all that stuff, from my understanding, you probably have a clearer picture on the 106 than the 126, but the 126 gives you a bigger picture. I think it's a pretty good trade-off. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that works either, but
I can sit there. I have them linked, and I can sit there with both of them on LiveScope, and I like the 126 better than the 106.
Yeah. I did want to ask you one question just to circle back. You were talking about if you are how you set up your electronics. If you know you're running to a shallow spot, that's all you're going to do. You're just setting it on 15 and 30 or whatever. Right. So what do you do if you roll up and you're just going to scan?
Right. So if I'm looking for structure, be it rock piles, brush piles, logs, whatever, I'm probably going to run that thing out 120 to 150 feet.
Okay. Wow.
And I'm scanning 150 feet, so I'm getting, a 100-yard wide section. And I'll have my trolling motor. I have a Garmin trolling motor. I'll have it on as high as it'll go.
Okay.
And if I say, hey, I'm going to check the mouth of this creek, I can check a 100-yard wide by the mouth of that creek in a couple of minutes. And, if I look over here and I see something at 150 feet, I can go there and fish it if I want, or I can just click on the screen, mark that waypoint, keep going, check this section. If there's only one brush pile, maybe I go back and check it, maybe I don't. If I find 10, I just get to the end of the line, turn around, come back and start fishing them. And so at that point, I'm going to zoom in as I get closer to each one. Probably around 70 feet-ish, I'll start really looking at the brush pile to see what's in it. I feel like I can identify it at 70 feet, whether that's something I need to go and fish or not, based on what it looks like, what fish may be in it, what size they may be. So as I'm coming up on it from 70 feet, I'm dialing it back. And if it's one I'm going to fish, I'll probably fish it at 30 feet range. So once I get the full brush pile inside of 30 feet, so it may be at 25, it may be from 20 to 30, just depending, then I'll start casting.
Right.
I feel like I'm accurate enough at 40, 45, 50 feet to catch those fish if they're hungry and they want to eat. If I'm going to have to talk them into it, I don't think I can see the fish well enough and see their reactions and see those little movements in those fish to decide what I need to do without zooming into 25 or 30 feet.
Sure.
So I might start at 150, find a brush pile, and I'm still going to work it into 30 feet, and I'm not going to throw that thing until it's inside of 30 feet. The fish are really biting, and you can catch them everywhere you go. Sure, I'll throw at them at 50 and 60 feet, and I'm fine with that because you can just cover more water, and you don't have to put as much pressure on the fish if you can stay back. I do think there are times where I pull up on a brush pile and at 35 feet I'm fine, and when I get them to 30 feet I'll see one sneak out the back.
I've kind of noticed that too. Like if you get up within, especially the clearer it is, it's like I've noticed this before. Maybe you can attest to this, but like I've seen it on Baden, I've seen it on High Rock. Like you roll up to a brush pile, let's just say it's in any amount of water, and it's loaded. You got all these fish on it. You can tell these are crappies. This is going to be a great day. It's going to be a great day here. You pull up, and then you just within just a few seconds, you start seeing the biggest blobs in that group. They start sneaking around the backside of it, and they'll sort of station out here, like on the backside of that brush pile. Now, sometimes you can still catch them. You just got to throw it beyond the brush pile and let it sink down. Maybe you catch them, but like they know you're there.
For sure. And like you said, you can still catch them. They're going to be looking at you when you do it, but you can still catch
they're going to be they're facing this way. Right?
And pro tip.
We're all about those here.
Pro tip. Whether it's a lay down or brush pile, if you run those fish out, you'll catch them.
If you run them out, you will catch them.
If you run them out, and you can keep up with them.
Okay.
If you can keep up with them, you'll catch them.
Really?
If they run into another brush pile somewhere close by, you probably won't. If you can get them out of the brush, and they don't go back to it, and they don't go to another one, and they just sit out there by themselves, you can catch them.
Okay. Interesting.
I don't recommend just violently destroying brush piles for any reason, but if you get hung and you push some fish out, you'll probably catch them.
Interesting.
As long as they don't run into another one.
Yeah.
If they just move out from the brush or from whatever, and they're just sitting there, to me and in my mind, it seems like maybe they're just a little confused about what's going on, and they're just kind of checking it out. If they run to another brush pile, they're probably scared.
Okay.
If they run and you have to run them down and you can't keep up with them, locally here you're probably not going to get them. There are some places in the country that you can run those fish
personality
down. But locally here, if they just move out of the brush pile, you'll probably get them. Or if they just move out of the lay down, you'll probably get them. I figured this out one time. I was fishing a lay down and had a pontoon just cruising like pontoons do, and smashed me up into a brush pile or up into a lay down, and there was a good fish in there that I'd been trying to catch and couldn't get my bait to it because it was just a little thick, and I watched him just swim right out, and I was like, man, I've been here for 30 minutes. I'm mad at this pontoon. We're about to fight, and I finally get my boat out of my trolling motor's all hung up, my transducer's hung up. I finally get everything out. My brakes are hung up, and I turn around, and there's that fish just sitting there 10 feet. Was it the same fish? I don't know, but I believe it was.
Could be.
I believe it was, because that fish wasn't there when I pulled up. I sat there for 30 minutes. He wasn't there. A fish that size was in the tree, and now a fish that size sitting out here. Flipped out there on him, caught him. Just that quick and easy. And I'd probably flipped on him 25 times in this tree. Couldn't get him to do anything. He moved out of the lay down, and I caught him just like that. And I know there's been several other podcasts recently that people have admitted to, hey, you can catch these fish if you can get them out of the brush. So that's why I don't feel so bad saying it.
Okay.
I think for the last couple of years, it's kind of been a little secret.
Okay.
Little sneaky thing, but
well, it's something I thought that I was noticing, but now that you mentioned it, now I'm thinking back, and I think what I'm recalling this correctly, that the opposite is also true. So like if you're fishing a pile and you've got these big fat ones that just they're down in there and they're lazy, like they're not moving, they're not coming out. Okay, you're not gonna catch them.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. It seems like you roll up on that pile. If there's some in there, you throw on a couple of times, they're either gonna come up out of that and eat, or you're wasting your time.
Right.
And so like if they're stuck down in there and they're lazy and they're not moving, might as well move.
Yep.
But that is interesting. I had that happen on baiting the other day. Where they kind of move around behind and.
As long as you can get a bait
I had
to
a
them,
field day. As a matter of fact, I think it was when I made the video. I don't know if some of you've seen the video. I took my son and we went down there. We clobbered them on this one brush pile. It's funny. We showed up. It was the very first brush pile we went to. And anyway, speaking of catching a ton of fish, because I think I covered all the questions I wanted to ask you about the summertime fishing. Story time.
Yeah.
So, tell some stories. How about let's talk High Rock.
Yep.
Let's talk a stellar day.
Stellar day. All right.
So this is knock it out of the park day. What? Tell us. Take us through that, or
I'll give 2 because I have.
I like 2.
2 opinions on stellar days, right?
Okay. They can come in different flavors.
Yep. So first one would have been. I was probably 16, 17.
Mm-hmm.
I got my own boat when I was 16, so it would have been not long after that. Went to a section of the lake, and this was back in. I used to only tight line. I wasn't a big long liner. I only tight lined. 8 rods out the front, just me up there minding my own business,
Right.
And I guess I would have been 16. So me and a friend of mine, we went. This was on spring break, and my dad and his dad went, and we had this little 2-boat tournament there.
Okay.
Right? And we went, and I want to say we might have had like 8 pounds with 5 fish, which is not bad. Nothing spectacular by any means.
Okay.
But at 16 years old, beating dad, that was, give me a little pep in the step.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Caught a ton of fish. Spring break, me and my buddy, we're just having a good time. 16 years old, I'm out there in my own boat.
Yeah.
Went to Crow Creek and just smashed them, right? That's back when I used to go and catch 80, 90, 100 fish in a day, and most of them would be that long. And every once in a while, you get a 1.5,
Yeah.
And so back then, catching a bunch of fish, or maybe not the most weight, but just a good time, spectacular. As far as best day, would have been in the church tournament this past fall. Probably the hardest I've ever fished and the hardest fish I've ever had to catch. I think I had 40 something. I don't remember exactly. Won the tournament. Fished one spot all day about the size of a football field, and they were just there, and it was 3 foot deep, and caught them all right there. And I probably caught somewhere 60 pound-and-a-half fish plus.
Wow.
And then ended up with over a 2 pound average for my 7.
That's awesome.
And I've had several 14 pound days, and there were days where I caught 7 2-pounders or 5 2-pounders, 2 and some change, but this particular day I remember weighing an over 2 pound fish and putting it back.
Wow.
That's just like...
That just doesn't happen.
In a tournament, you weigh a 2-pounder, it's just like, put it
Not
back.
here. I mean, maybe some Grenada or someplace.
Well, so that was last fall. And this past spring, I went down to Grenada, and I was like, I'm going to go down here and catch 3-pounders. And everywhere you look, I mean, we weighed in a little... They did 5 fish there. We weighed in a little over 10 pounds each day. And we're just culling 2-pounders, one after another, after another, just 2-pounders all day long, and we just couldn't get the 250s. We'd have a couple of them, but couldn't get the consistent
Goodness.
the 250 to 3 pound fish that it took to win. But yeah, that's I've had a lot of 14 pound days with 7 fish. Most of them was just I barely got there, and then that particular day I could have done it multiple times, and it's
that'd be a good day. Have to throw back 2 pound fish. I mean that. Gosh.
And we had the NCL tournament this past February. We're culling 2 pound fish in that tournament as well as a 5 fish tournament. So maybe didn't have as many of them, but still putting back 2 pound fish. And
wow.
And our fisheries can do that in the wintertime pretty regular. I think they can do it in the summertime if we all put the effort in. It's just a lot harder to do it in the summertime.
It's harder. It does make it a little harder, yeah.
last fall I caught my biggest crappie to date, which was a 331, and pull up on a spot, zoomed in on this one spot because I knew I had caught fish there before, and there's 3 of them just sitting there beside each other, and I flip in there the first cast, catch the one, it's a 331, and I'm just like, man, this is wild. I'm like calling my dad, taking pictures and everything because I've never caught a 3-pounder before, right? And so I'm just like pumped up, totally forgot that there was 2 more sitting there, right? And so I'm just pumped, and this is in a tournament, and I'm like, man, I'm about to rack it up here.
Yeah.
And this was like lunchtime.
Yeah.
And I didn't even have any fish at this point. I had nothing. I had caught some fish, not fish that I thought I was going to weigh, so I just threw them back.
Right.
Never do that for anybody watching.
Yeah, that's probably
if you
not
catch
good.
a fish in a tournament, put it in the live well until you get 5 or 7 or whatever the limit is. Put them in the live well.
Upgrade from there.
And just take the time to upgrade. But after I get done, spend 10 minutes or so goes by, and I was like, oh man, there was other fish up here. So I go back up there and I look around, and there are 2 of them just sitting there. They had moved kind of off of the structure they were on, and I was like, no way those fish are still here. Flip out there, 260.
Really?
Just the very next, I caught a 331 and 260 in 2 casts, and I was like, man, this is nuts. So like, I'm back there taking pictures with both of them in the middle of the tournament. I've got 2 fish in the live well. Now I've got 6 pounds with 2 fish, but
goodness,
I'm just I'm pumped, and I followed the other one for over an hour. But yeah, so I'm chasing this fish, can't figure it out, and she's not gonna bite. And I decide, like, hey, you got an hour and a half maybe left in this tournament, and those are the only fish I had in the live well. So I had an hour and a half to go get my other 5 fish, and I ended up, I had 13 pounds, won the tournament, all worked out really well. But at lunchtime, I had 0 fish.
Wow.
I was ready to go home. I just, and I just pulled up on this spot. I was like, well, I've seen a big one on this spot before. So let me try to win big fish. Sometimes it's not your day, but you can go catch one big one. And I pulled up and caught 2, and I was like, we're gonna have to get after it because it looked really bad. If you show up with just 2 fish, 2 big ones, then it looks like luck.
Yeah.
And it was 100% luck. But I was able to catch, some other ones to add to it and make it not look so much like luck. But it was certainly luck because, like I said, I had nothing. Awesome. I pulled up and I was like, oh, there's 3 big ones. Flipped in there, and then 2 fish had 6 pounds.
That's so
just
cool.
that quick.
Yeah.
But that goes to say, hey, a lot of people, they get stuck in a rut and it's not going well. They get stuck on one spot or just in an area and it's not, just go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Don't get caught up in, well, so and so is fishing here, or I caught a big one here last week. Just
right.
If it's not working, do something different.
Well, and I do think that's something good about the tournament series that you're running. Well, I say tournament series, the club.
Yeah.
The club that it's forcing people into other spots. So just like myself, for instance, the other night, I spent time fishing in Swearing Creek with Pete, and like the Swearing Creek's not a creek that I fish usually. Right. Like I just don't go up there much. But now I feel like, having done that the other night, I could go up there. I could catch some fish. Like, we found some brush piles. We, searched around. And we
won't tell Pete you're fishing in spots, but
no, I'm not gonna tell him. But sorry, Pete.
But
that's helpful.
That's the idea. That. If you get 2 spots a week out of the 6 sections, that's 12 spots that you catch fish on. Then anytime you go fishing from that point forward, you've got at least 12 spots.
Right.
Hey, I have caught fish on 12 spots on this lake, and majority of tournament fishermen, crappie tournament fishermen, bass tournament fishing locally here don't have 12 spots they can go to on any lake.
Right.
And that's what we need to change.
Right.
For everybody, myself included. I fish spots Sunday for this tournament coming up to see if there's even any fish in those areas, because I don't fish those areas. So I learned about those areas. Next week we're going to fish another section of the lake. I don't fish that much. A lot of people do. I don't. And I'm going to have to go learn spots. I can pull up my Active Captain app on my phone and show you every waypoint I have, and I've probably got 5 in that area, and probably 3 of them don't actually exist anymore. They were probably, they were probably brush piles 10 years ago,
Sure.
and they're probably gone. So, I'm going to have to put in some work, to find some spots. And, maybe I find that one spot that come September or October and we got a big tournament. I did catch a big one over at this one spot, and you pull up and, in 2 casts, you got 6 pounds, and that's exactly what that spot was for me. It was somewhere close by. My parents live in Crane Creek. I'll tell everybody I called them in Crane Creek, and it's somewhere close by that sometimes I'll go put the boat in at their house and go fish for 2 hours, and little features here and there that I just check out and then use that on other parts of the lake. And I lost a good fish there one time. Several years goes by, and I go back to that spot because I was like, I think this is the pattern that I need to be on. It just didn't work out for me, the first half of the day. And I said, well, let me go try that. Let me go try that spot. And I went in there.
Sure enough.
There they were. So I think that's something that we just want everybody to learn is just the more spots you got, the more experience you have. You can fish for 30 years in one creek, and you might be the greatest fisherman in that creek there ever was, but if you're fishing anywhere other than that creek, you don't have it. And somebody who's fished for 6 months can outfish you everywhere else on the lake. And not that it doesn't make you a good fisherman that you're good in that creek, but if you're good at every creek, or if you're kind of good at every creek, you'll be pretty good on the lake.
Right.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of benefit to be had from it, and I just want to say, I appreciate what you're doing with the club. I think not that there's not a lot of great tournament trails and clubs out there, because there are, but I can just say, I appreciate what you're doing. It's in a little different lane, than some of the others, and I think that I think a lot of us who just trying to get our feet wet and that kind of thing, we want to learn. I think it's really good, and I feel like that kind of a similar lane to what I'm in, like podcast wise, because we wanting to help people be better at fishing, just have more productive days on the water, just enjoy it more, and whether that's with their family and friends, or buddies from church, or fun fishing, or whether it's tournament fishing. We just want people to be able to enjoy what's out there and take advantage of it. And so anyway, I appreciate what you're doing there, and wish you the best with Tournament Trail, and I plan to see you out there. I've been once this season, but hopefully get out again some and see you. But
we'll be happy to have you anytime.
Appreciate it.
And that goes for everybody. If you've never fished a tournament, that's okay. If you got a 14-foot John boat, that's okay. If you got a $150,000 Icon and you fish tournaments all over the country, that's okay too.
Just come on out.
That's right. Come pay your $25 or your $40 and have a good time, and learn something for yourself and teach somebody something else. And that's all we ask for. Just come, have a good time, and be a part of something good.
Okay. Tell you what, let's wrap up with this. So if somebody's not familiar with the tournament, they don't know like how to get a hold of you or how to find out about it, tell them what's the best way to get in touch with you and to find out about this tournament.
So you can go to Facebook and search High Rock Crappie Club. We'll be the one with the black fish, as it's very elementary when it comes to Facebook pages. High Rock Crappie Club, that's it. We have a blackfish photo, and you can follow along with everything tournament wise there. We post results, tournament updates. I'm going to try to start posting more on there as far as pre-fishing, what I see, or hey, this is what worked for me. I posted one this week with some fish I caught on Sunday, and that way, if it's something you're not familiar with, or a part of the lake you're not familiar with, it gives you a little heads up. I'm not going to hold anything back. There's no secrets in crappie fishing. It doesn't matter. There's no secret spots. There's no, I have people come to me and say, man, I've been doing this thing and nobody knows about it. And I'm like, man, we were doing that 5 years ago. There's no secrets. So for me, I'm going to post if I go and catch a 10-pound 5-fish bag pre-fishing. I'm going to say that, and I'm going to say this is where I caught them and how I caught them. Because again, this isn't about the money. Mm-hmm. It's not about the bragging rights. It's not about who's a better fisherman. It's about let's all be better fishermen. Yeah. And better fishermen on Thursdays means more better fishermen on Saturdays. And so for those guys who it is about the money, we're just bringing you some more money. Just make sure you're getting better yourself, because a lot of these guys that are coming during the week, they're getting good, and they're gonna start taking people's money on Saturdays come fall.
Okay.
So,
well, we're looking forward to it.
Yep.
Well, Clayton, was privileged. Yeah, I can't even talk. Privileged to have you in this evening.
I enjoyed it.
Good to visit with you and catch up, and hopefully we'll see you out there. So don't forget to check out High Rock Crappie Club. If you're watching Brilliant Fishing, either on YouTube, you can also check us out on Amazon Music, Spotify, and the different audio podcast platforms. Check us out, like, subscribe, send us an email, brilliantfishingnc@gmail.com. Something you'd like to see on the channel, somebody you'd like for us to interview. Hey, just shoot me an email. It's free. So appreciate you listening or watching, as the case may be, and we will catch you on the next one.
That's right.